I love it when technology works.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third of our health and wellness series with our partners, the Healthy Employee. Today, we are going to be talking about the afternoon slump, and we've got three fantastic sessions coming up over the next coming months for you as well. But without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our dietitian who's joining us for today, Dahlia. So welcome, Dahlia.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Appreciate that. So I'll just bring up my slides. Do you want me to do the poll again on this, or
No, that's
no?
fine. I think, yeah, if you got the
Lovely.
results there, that would be
So
great.
that's useful. So I'll just share my screen. Okay. So welcome everybody. As Darren says, I'm a registered dietitian, and this session is on behalf of the Healthy Employee. And from the poll, it looks like it's something that is affecting a number of you. So hopefully with this session, you'll have a few tools in your toolbox that can help you get through that kind of dreadful afternoon slump that we often suffer from. So we know research has shown us that actually the most common time for the afternoon slump is about 12:16. So very, very precise. But generally, most people kind of get this sometime between sort of 12 maybe, you know, if your sugar levels are dipping just prior to lunch, or between kind of 2 and 4 after we've had something to eat and we're kind of back at our desk. So it's something that many of you have said does happen to you, and I'm interested to know, you know, why you think this happens. Now, I know technology is not on our side at the moment, but I'm just going to see if I can bring up a little word cloud for you. So just bear with me one moment, and I'm going to see if I can share. Oh, sorry. There you go. Now, I don't know whether you've used Mentimeter before. If you've got a phone, all you need to do is to type in at the top, you'll see www.menti.com. It won't download anything onto your phones. And then you've got a little code here, 31759253. And if you just put a word, why you think you experience the afternoon slump, whether it's down to what you're eating, what you're drinking, tiredness, stress, anything like that. And then what you'll see, so hopefully you can see a few things that are coming through on there. Can I just get a thumbs up that that's working, Daniel? Yeah, okay. So there's a few things that are coming up here. So we'll wait till it stops. Okay, so there's some interesting ones. So most of them seem to be down to food. So things like not having breakfast, tiredness seems to be the most popular one. Not eating enough, lack of fresh air. We're going to cover a lot of these things to do with sugar, diet, digesting food, fatigue, too busy, changes in your blood sugar levels, being bored. So there's quite a few different ones there, which is interesting. And tiredness certainly seems to be the one that's coming up again and again, but seems to be down to maybe what you're eating. So that's really, really useful. Thank you very much for that. So let's just bring our slides back. Okay.
All good. We've got them on screen.
Excellent. So, so hopefully you've now got the PowerPoint back. Excellent. So we're going to cover quite a lot of these things. And most of us kind of think that maybe food or fresh air has got something to do with that. And that's absolutely right. So if we think about, what we're eating, if we have a really heavy, unbalanced meal, and if we're having maybe lots of fatty foods, that stays in our stomach for quite a long time. If we've eaten quite a lot, what happens is all of our blood that we need for our brain and our brain function is all being diverted to our digestive system to digest that food. So it kind of makes sense that we're kind of feeling that slump and that tiredness because we've got a lot of work to go on to digest that big meal, and we're just not getting enough going to our brain. So what we eat is quite important. If we're having lots of foods that have got lots of refined carbohydrates, so sort of, if you can imagine the difference between maybe eating something like a sausage roll and eating, a salad with some brown rice and vegetables in, it's going to be quite different. So that kind of refined carbohydrates, and by refined carbohydrates, we mean that all the kind of the goodness, the fiber and the bran, the outer layers are all stripped away. So you're not really getting that fiber, and what that means is the food is release the energy quite quickly, which in some ways you would think is a good thing, but what happens is it's released quite quickly and then we get that slump again when it drops. So we want things that will be released much more slowly for us. If we go for too long without eating, and some of you are mentioning, things like not having breakfast or maybe not eating enough, then that can make us feel tired because, again, as I say, our brain needs energy. If our energy are coming up and then we've not eaten for a long time or we've missed breakfast, that drop in our energy means we're just not able to concentrate very well and we just feel a bit sluggish and a bit tired. So things like sugary snacks can give us that kind of quick boost of energy. But again, the problem is we get that peak in energy levels and then it drops again. And we kind of want another sugary snack to keep us going. So what we're going to be looking at is how we can kind of prevent that. Fluid's also really important. If you think of the amount of fluid in our bodies, and particularly our brains are kind of even more fluid based, we really need to make sure we're getting enough fluid on board. And if we're not getting enough water, we can get dehydrated. That can lead to tiredness and confusion, lack of concentration as well. So it's really important that we make sure we're getting enough fluid. And caffeine as well, caffeine gives us that kind of burst, but we know that actually it's the kind of the first coffees of the day that are the most effective, and actually later in the day caffeine doesn't really have that much effect to us. And actually the Royal College of Psychiatrists actually recommend that if you're feeling tired, that maybe less caffeine is better for you. We know that having around about 4 or 5 cups of coffee is kind of coming up to that 400 milligrams of caffeine level, which is recommended as the kind of the safe maximum. So actually maybe different types of fluids in the afternoon, so water or flavored water, things like green teas, herbal teas, fruit teas can actually be a bit more beneficial perhaps. When it comes to alcohol, obviously drinking in the daytime, thinking when you're not at work, tends to make us tired. But as well as that, when we drink late at night, it can affect our sleep. So we're less likely to sleep well. Although we can maybe fall asleep quite quickly, it does affect the quality of our sleep, really. So you tend to wake up feeling less refreshed, and then you go for the caffeine. So it's that vicious cycle, really. Taking kind of a different angle, not looking at the food, but kind of I wanted to mention some of the lifestyle factors as well, because many of us are working from home. I can see some of you obviously at home and before your videos all went off, or you may be going into the office. But a lot of people have been spending a lot more time at the computer. And on Zoom calls and the like. And, we're having to do a lot of concentration. So you're staring at the computer all the time, and that can result in a headache and tiredness. Your posture, if you're hunched over, if you've not got a good chair, obviously, health and safety at work, we're looking at breaks, and we're looking at making sure we've got the right height of desk and the right chair. But at home, we may not have had those assessments necessarily. So if we're not sitting right and we're not concentrating, and having different abilities to maybe move away from our desks so much and more breaks, then that can affect how tired we feel. So things like stretching and exercise, getting some fresh air can be really helpful. So even going out for a 10-minute walk at lunchtime, just getting some fresh air will really re-energize you. Things like stress as well can't be underestimated. So, if we're feeling stressed, that can affect how well we kind of deal with things in the afternoon in particular. And often we'll kind of go for those sugary snacks to kind of give us that kind of boost that we want. But again, that can sometimes result in these slumps. If you're concerned about your weight and you think you're carrying a bit too much weight, obviously that's putting a strain on our heart and our lungs, and that can affect our energy levels as well. So when we're kind of looking at defeating the afternoon slump, a good rule of thumb is to try and kind of think of having your meals at about 50% from your vegetables and salad, and then splitting the rest between some food that's got some protein in it, and some food that's got some starchy whole grains. Try not to go for too long without eating, and try and have this kind of balance if you can. And that will allow your digestive system to cope, but also allow the sugars to be released nice and slowly and keep you going throughout the afternoon. Having some snacks, some sort of more healthier snacks that have got less sugar in them, but are maybe releasing the sugars more slowly. Again, that will obviously help you as you go through the afternoon. So we'll have a look at some ideas for that. But good ideas for snacks tends to be things like maybe some fruit or some yogurt, some oat cakes, even some popcorn, chopped vegetables and hummus. Any of these sorts of things, rather than things like your Mars bars and your biscuits and things like that, which we know are not really giving us any nutrition, unfortunately, nice as they may be to eat. So you might have seen this. This is the Eat Well guide, and the fruits and vegetables, your starchy foods, your dairy foods, your milk, yogurt, cheese, etc., and then your protein foods. You've got a small area that's your fatty oils and spreads, so that's quite a small section, but still important that we do have some fat in the diet. And then on the left, you've got the foods that we consider to be high in fat and sugar. And obviously, those are the foods that we tend to kind of crave when we're having that afternoon slump. But as I've explained, they've got lots of fat and sugar in, so they're not really going to give us any nutrition. And whilst they give us that kind of a little boost, we get that drop in our sugar levels. So I'll go through each in turn, and we'll talk a bit more about the fruits and vegetables and the starchy carbohydrates, the protein foods, and the dairy foods. But I'm just going to pick up on some of those as we go through, and the effect that they have really on the brain function. So thinking about your fruits and vegetables, well, these do contain some natural sugars in them, and we shouldn't be worried about the natural sugar in fruits and vegetables, because actually they're held within the cell walls and they're released quite slowly. So they are really good for us. They've also got lots of vitamins and minerals, so they help to protect our cells. Lots of B vitamins that are good for releasing energy. They contain vitamin C, which helps us to absorb iron, which we need to carry oxygen around our body. And they release their energy quite slowly. So, if you have something like a banana, it's going to release its energy quite slowly and steadily. So that can be really useful. They've also got things like potassium, which is good for our nervous system. We've got things like vitamin K and folic acid. So they're a real powerhouse of vitamins and minerals, which keeps us healthy. Because they've got fiber in, they're quite filling. So actually, having something like an apple or a banana or a handful of grapes or something can actually keep us a lot fuller than if we were to grab a biscuit. When it comes to portions, you're looking at really whatever fits in your hand when it comes to fruit and vegetables. Vegetables about 3 tablespoons, or it could be something like soup, or it could be fresh or frozen or even tinned, as long as it's in juice or in water and not in salt or syrup. So we'll move on to the next food group. But the fruits and vegetables are good to include really as part of your main meal, but also really useful as a snack as well. So as we mentioned, starchy foods, so these will provide you a fuel. And actually our bodies are really good at using carbohydrates as an energy source. It's needed by the brain in particular, and it's a really efficient fuel source. The difficulty is there is a whole different types of carbohydrates. So things like white bread and white pasta and cornflakes and Rice Krispies are carbohydrates, but actually they're not providing us with any fiber. So if you can, you want to try and choose things that have got fiber in them. So things like wholemeal bread, seeded bread, brown pasta, brown rice, quinoa, oats, whole grain cereals, these sorts of things. And the reason for this is that the fiber has got lots of nutrients in it. You've got B vitamins, which help the body to release energy. And they release their energy nice and slowly, and they also keep us full. And fiber is really important for our bowel health as well. And obviously keeping us well is really important. So if we're having these sorts of foods as part of our lunch or as part of our snack, they're releasing the energy quite slowly, and we don't get that sugar rush that we do with chocolate and things. The fats and proteins that we should try to be having are the sort of things that we'll find in meat, chicken, fish, lentils, seeds. So these are important for providing us with protein. And protein we need for our muscle health, so for growth and repair. As adults, we're no longer growing, but we still need to repair our muscles, particularly if we're doing different exercises, but even just as a regular replenishment of those muscle tissues. And don't forget that things like, as well as the muscles in our legs and our arms, our heart's a muscle, and we've got organs inside our body that are made of proteins. So things like, say, that the leaner foods, so lean meat, chicken and fish, and particularly oily fish. If you're vegetarian or you want to have more of a plant-based diet, so trying to go for more things like lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, these sorts of things, which will provide us with a really good source of protein. Nuts and seeds are also a good way of getting a bit of extra protein. They contain healthy fats and they can be really useful, and eggs as well. Daniel was just talking to us about eggs earlier, and sort of different information that seems to kind of be abound on eggs. So eggs provide a really good source of protein, and they also provide iron. So they can be really important to include as part of a healthy, balanced diet. The other thing that these foods include are some of the healthy fats. So particularly when you're looking at oily fish, we talk about oily fish as being brain food, and actually, that is really true, because the omega-3 fats in oily fish are really important for our brain function. And we do find some of those fats in nuts and seeds as well, but these are important to include. The types of fats, when you are having some fats, is to try and go for more of the unsaturated fats. So things like rapeseed and olive oil are much better than having cream and lard and butter, etc. The other food group that you'll have recalled from the Eat Well guide is the milk and dairy. So we really need this food group to provide us with calcium, which is good for our bones. So trying to include things like yogurt and cheese are important, or non cow's milk based alternatives are fine. They're usually fortified with calcium, so just check. But these can be really, really important for us as well. So if you want something like a snack, a yogurt's quite a good thing to include. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was about hydration. And hydration is really, really important. We need probably around 1.5 to 2 litres, so up to about 8 cups of fluid. And obviously water is the best thing. So, if you've got a water bottle on your desk, or if you can go to the tap, or if you are in the office, the water coolers and things like that, just to kind of keep yourself hydrated. Other fluids will count, so things like sugar-free squash, milk even, that counts as well. But water's obviously the best. It doesn't have any calories in it. It doesn't have any extra additives in it. So you've not got anything like sugar in it. So water's the best. But I appreciate that not everybody enjoys water that much. So there are things you can do to make it a bit more interesting. Try and make sure it's cold. You can put a bit of fruit in it as well. That can be quite useful. Most of us tend to kind of get by, I guess, on things like tea and coffee. So as I mentioned earlier, although there's no official safety limit, it's suggested that up to 400 milligrams of caffeine is probably about the limit. And generally, a cup of coffee has got around about 100 milligrams of caffeine in it. Now, it does depend. So if you are able to still go to any of the coffee shops, so things like Cafe Nero, Costa Coffee, Starbucks, any of those, you'll find that the coffees that they produce, because obviously they're using coffee beans, etc., and depending on how large the coffee is, they can have quite a lot more than it would be from an instant coffee that you make at home. So it could be 140, 150 milligrams of caffeine, which would be more than your coffee at home. So it's a good idea to try and just limit, if you're going over the 5 cups a day, to try and just limit that a little bit if possible, and think about maybe some decaffeinated drinks, or things, as I said, like the green teas, the herbal teas, more of the water. And actually, I think you will find that by reducing those, you will reduce that afternoon slump, because often we tend to kind of gravitate towards the caffeinated drinks because we think they're going to perk us up, but actually sometimes in the afternoon they do the opposite. I mentioned alcohol a little bit earlier, but just to kind of raise that again, if we can try and keep within the 14 units a week, so that's the same for men and for women, trying to have a couple of alcohol-free days and having no more than about 3 units at any one time. And partly that's because obviously caffeine and alcohol and these sorts of things are stimulants, but they all affect our sleep and our alertness. So although initially caffeine can make us more alert, if we're having a lot of it, it can have the opposite effect. And the same with alcohol. Alcohol, for some people, they find that it initially can improve their sleep. They get off to sleep quicker, but actually the type of sleep you have is really poor sleep, and so you're actually going to wake up feeling a lot more tired. So trying to reduce alcohol and certainly keep it within those limits is really, really helpful. So looking further kind of field, not just at the fluids and not just at the foods, but thinking about the office lifestyle, trying to get a bit of a break from the computer, from getting outside, maybe going for a drink. We've not got the luxury of being able to kind of go for the chat at the water cooler or going to the office photocopier or things like that when you're working from home. But even going downstairs and getting a drink, going and getting a bit of fresh air, we have to try and force ourselves sometimes, because it's very easy to just kind of sit there at the desk. So make sure that you're getting up and that you are getting some fresh air. Open the window. Many of the offices obviously are now, where they are open, we've got a lot more circulating air, and that can really help, because I don't know whether any of you have ever found, but when you're in an office and you've not got any open windows, it can make you feel quite tired. You need to sort of go out and get a bit of fresh air. So doing that stretch, doing that walk, getting a bit of fresh air, getting a bit of time away from the screen. So I just wanted, before we go over to questions, to just kind of have a think about what ideas you might have. And what we can do is we can maybe put the chat on, and I'll bring my Mentimeter back up, and we'll maybe, because that seemed to work quite well, hopefully, give you a chance just to think about what sort of things you can try. And then if you've got any questions, we'll put over to questions, if that's okay.
All the questions have been flooding in, Dahlia.
Have they? Okay, brilliant.
Yeah. We were talking about water, because some people say on here that they set themselves reminders. But for me personally, I'm one of those people where I can just go throughout the whole day and forget that I've even had one glass of
Mhm.
water. So is there anything that you would recommend in terms of reminding us, or that we've got our drink, but it's on our desk and we're trying to think, oh, okay, I need to actually drink that, but it just slips the mind sometimes,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it is really, really difficult. One of the things that some of the water bottles have got, they've got little lines on them, and it reminds you, drink more, or afternoon drink, morning drink times. Those can be quite helpful. Or setting little alarms if you've got a Fitbit or a little alarm. Um, and you could, if you're doing something every half an hour, so that you get up away from your desk and just have water. But I know I'm absolutely the same. Sometimes you can go when you're really intrigued with something and you're working hard, it's really easy to forget. So some post-it notes, water bottles that have got little notes on them. Or I mean, my Fitbit buzzes at me when I need to get up and move, so it can do the same for fluids. So that might be something to try.
Yeah, there's a lady I was talking to, because I haven't got a Fitbit, and there's a lady I was talking to the other day, and she said she sets the alarm on her oven for every half an hour, and then she'll do a run up and down the stairs 10 times and 10 star jumps, and then carry on working, which I thought was a great idea.
Fantastic. That's a great idea.
But we were talking about cake as well. So, okay, if we were talking about sweet treats, which we've all got a sweet tooth, and carrot cake seems to be the most popular cake that's been
Mhm.
discussed in the chat. What would you advise on, if we could have those treats? I know you mentioned oat cakes, but is there anything else that that you feel that you would recommend?
I think the difficulty is, it depends how often you're having it, and I certainly don't want to say, don't have any cake at all, because there's bound to be times, and celebrations, or times when you want a little bit of cake. And if you do want to have some cake and you want to enjoy it, then I think it's really important that we don't have any of that guilt associated with it, and we have it and we enjoy it, and we kind of take time to enjoy that and think about, be sort of being mindful about eating that cake and enjoying it. If it's a kind of a regular thing, so things that are a bit helpful, as I said, oat cakes are quite good. Even things like scones, plain scones, obviously without kind of jam and cream on them, are much better, much lower in fat and sugar than cakes. If you're at home, a slice of toast if you're feeling hungry. Some people might go for a run, or do some exercise. I hasten. Well, I'm just kind of worried about saying going to the gym, because I know gyms aren't kind of open at the moment. But if you're somebody that maybe would have gone to the gym after work, actually you might need a little snack in the afternoon. Popcorn's quite good. Even there are sort of rice cakes. You can get chocolate covered rice cakes, and obviously they've got a bit of chocolate on them. Some people kind of feel they need that little chocolate fix, but there's not a huge amount of chocolate on them. Things like plain crackers are quite good, or veggie sticks, and hummus. Little mini oat cakes as well, if you don't want the big ones, are quite good. Or fruit and yogurts. Those are the kind of the healthier things. When it does come to cake, you mentioned carrot cake. The funny thing is that obviously, we sort of think of carrot cake as maybe being one of the healthier cakes, but actually not necessarily, although it has got some carrots in it. And it will generally have a bit more fiber than maybe your Victoria sponge. Doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy,
No.
or a healthy one to choose. It also comes down to portion. If you're just having a tiny amount, a small portion, then that can be okay. But maybe try some of the other ideas as well, because actually, although we feel we need the cake, sometimes some of the other things will actually have a much more positive effect on us.
Okay, cool. Has anyone got any questions they want to ask Dahlia in the chat box? Feel free to ask. I mean, the other thing I was going to say, Dahlia, is I've replaced crisps with nuts.
Hmm.
But I've got one friend who is very calorie conscious. She looks at food in a calorie controlled diet way,
Hmm.
but says how much that nuts can be quite fattening. So again, does that come down to portion size? Because if I open a bag of nuts, I will eat and eat and eat and continue to eat. I'll probably eat more than if I eat crisps.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Yeah, so when you think of crisps, if we look at the fat content and the calorie content and compare crisps with nuts, you know, your friend's right. Nuts do contain a lot of fat. So actually, in terms of the percentage fat, nuts will have a higher fat content probably than crisps. They're also heavier, and so calorie wise they are quite calorie dense. However, when we think about foods, we need to remember that it's the whole food that we're eating, not just the calories. So actually your nuts are going to give you they're going to give you some fiber, they're going to give you some healthy fats which are good for you. They're going to give you some micronutrients like maybe selenium or magnesium that you need. They're quite filling. They're going to give you some protein. They're a really good source of protein. Whereas if we think about the crisps, they're basically just giving us fat and calories, and that's it. So the nuts are much better. But yes, it does come down to portions. So calorie wise, if you're trying to lose weight, it's probably not a good idea to eat a whole bag of nuts. So 25 grams is about a portion. That's kind of a handful. And some nuts are better for you in terms of fiber, but most nuts will have similar health benefits. Just try and make sure that they're the kind of unsalted nuts, because you don't want to be having too much salt. But nuts is a really good thing to have. But yeah, just be a little bit mindful. They do have lots of calories, but they've also got lots and lots of good nutrition in them.
I'm addicted to walnuts and pecan nuts.
Okay.
I look, but are those good?
Yeah, walnuts. There's been lots of studies on walnuts actually, so they are really beneficial. But most nuts are really healthy. They can be pretty good for your cholesterol levels. They've got lots of healthy fats as well, so they tend to be unsaturated, so monounsaturated fats, and a really good source of protein and fiber.
Uh,
So
We've got
yeah,
here.
they're certainly good to include. You just need to be careful how much of them you're eating, maybe.
Okay, no worries. Well, we've got Tracy's put here. A good. We don't want to, as you said earlier. There's no point saying like not to eat cake or not to eat chocolate because we're human. We want to have those treats. But she's put here that sometimes she has a bit of dark chocolate because dark chocolate is quite rich, so it takes away that craving quite quickly.
Yeah, dark chocolate. It definitely is a bit healthier for you than the white chocolate because it's got a lot more of the antioxidants in it, which is good. It's not a health food by any stretch of the imagination, but the thing about dark chocolate is it can be quite useful because it, as she says, it's quite rich. It's quite difficult to overeat quite as much as dark chocolate as perhaps your kind of milky chocolate. It's got less sugar in it. It is quite high in fat still, so you don't want to be eating a whole bar. But if you are controlled enough and you can limit yourself to a couple of squares, then that can be quite a good fix. Yeah.
And then we've also got the sweet and savoury going on in the chat box as well. Obviously, some people are more savoury,
Yes.
some people are more sweet, and also breakfast. Because what is it? What would you class as a great way to start the day? What would be good? I know you mentioned brown breads and seeded
Mhm.
bread, but cereals and I know you mentioned those as well. But what would you recommend would be a great kind of kickstart to the day?
So I would say the best breakfast probably, and of course I do live in Scotland, would be porridge, or if in the summer you can make overnight oats, and oats are really good because they're great for sugar levels and cholesterol because they're really slowly released energy source. They don't have any added sugar or anything, so you can add your own sweetness from fruit or whatever. You usually put some milk with it, so that's a good source of calcium. But they just keep you full for quite a long time through the morning. So if you've got time, a bowl of porridge would be ideal. Or if you've not got time, maybe some overnight oats. You can kind of soak them in some yogurt and fruit overnight with some fruit. So that would be kind of the best start. But there are other cereals. Things like Weetabix doesn't have quite so much sugar in as some of the other cereals. shredded wheat, things like that. Even, you know, for those that are savory, having something like a poached egg on whole grain toast would be fine. You know, it's just whatever suits you.
Yeah.
But it, you know, it is quite a good idea to have something for breakfast if you can.
Well, what about muesli or granolas? Because again, I hear all the time they're good because of what they've got in them, but they've got so much sugar. So again, what do you think of muesli and granola?
So granola is slightly different because basically what they're doing is you roast the oats with sugar or honey and some oils. So it does tend to be very high in fat and sugar. You can obviously get some that are a bit lower, but they tend to be quite high. They've obviously still got some nutrition because they've still got fiber in them, and you know, so they're not completely bad, but just be aware that they do have quite a lot of fat and sugar, and some will be higher than others. When it comes to muesli, it depends what's in there again. Um, it's a quite a good source of fiber. There will be some dried fruit in that, so you're getting some of the benefits of fruit, but obviously when fruit is dried, you're releasing a lot more of the sugars. It's much more concentrated, so it can bump up in terms of calories and your sugar content. So try and obviously go for the ones that don't have any added sugar, and maybe kind of mix them with something else.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And has anybody else got any questions they wanted to ask Dahlia? Feel free if you want to pop in the chat box. Very well. I think my only other question, apologies, I know I'm asking lots of questions,
No,
but
that's fine.
my other what I always get worried about is we've got this, you know, the eat, was it the eat
The
well?
Eat Well guide.
Yeah. So we've got all the different food groups, but for me, it's about putting those together with things. So it's very easy to have a portion of vegetables with something else. But when you're making things like, you know, casseroles or stews and or things that have got sauces with them, it's the sauces that I worry about sometimes because I think is that, you know, I don't know how much that they add when you know, when you're blending everything together kind of thing. I just wondered, like, you know, are there those types of meals that are healthy, or is it better just to have the different food groups cooked in their own way and kind of all separate?
No, I mean, you can put them together. So things like casseroles or bolognese. So if we took something like, say, a chicken casserole or a beef casserole, so you would have the meat and you would put, to make it kind of healthier, try and put plenty of vegetables in. So you might put some carrots, some leeks, some onions, and maybe some courgettes, some sweet potato or something like that. So different things. And then if you want your potatoes as part of that, you can chop potatoes and put them in there, or you might maybe have it with some brown rice or something, which would make it a bit healthier. What you can also do with casseroles and things like bologneses as well. So, you know, if you're making a bolognese, you'd have your mince, but you might want to cut down on that, maybe use a bit of lentils in there, or you could use corn mince or alternatives, and then put a whole heap of vegetables in. So, you know, peppers and onions and carrots, or you know, whatever vegetables you want. So that's a good way of just making it that little bit healthier. So it doesn't matter that they're kind of in individual portions. It's about what else is in there. So, you know, if you make a casserole and all you've got in there is a little bit of onion and some beef, and then you have it with a whole heap of mashed potato, that's not particularly balanced. Whereas if you add lots of vegetables and maybe some pulses into that, then you can make it a lot healthier, and then you're kind of adapting the portion, so you're getting a lot more
I'm,
vegetables
thi-
in there. Does
I'm
that make
thinking about,
sense?
yeah, I'm thinking about the parents here as well, because I know I was an absolute nightmare with vegetables when I was a kid, and you've got to try and get those vegetables in somehow, haven't you?
Yes,
Somewhere.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
brilliant. No, it's been great. What we've got, which has better nutritional benefits, sweet potatoes or white potatoes?
So now it's really interesting actually, because white potatoes are classed as one of your starchy foods. So they'll provide you with carbohydrates predominantly. And to make them healthier, you want to be having the skins. Um, when it comes to sweet potatoes, although they've got the word potato in them, they're actually uh, not directly related to the potatoes. So they actually will class as They do have quite a lot of carbohydrate, but they're actually classed as one of your vegetables. And they've got lots of vitamin A, things like carrots and mangoes and apricots, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, all the orangey things have got lots of carotenes in, which are a really good antioxidant. They have got some fiber in. The other interesting thing about sweet potatoes is they taste really sweet. But what we know is that actually the rate at which the sugars are released from sweet potatoes is actually a lot slower than white potatoes. So nutritionally, sweet potatoes have actually got the edge.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, brilliant. Great question, Tracy. Thank you. And finally, I guess, what about, I think it's a hot topic at the moment, and I think we touched on it at the very beginning, was immunity. So what sorts of things do you think you could recommend at the moment, food wise, that could kind of really help and support our immune systems?
Yeah, well, you probably need to get our Boost Your Immunity webinar, but
I know.
um,
I know. Just,
yeah,
just briefly though, if you had two or
of
three
course.
things that you could pick,
Yeah.
right?
So I think that the most important to say is, I mean, I think we're all quite concerned about immunity at the moment. You can't really do very much to really powerhouse your immunity, but what you want to do is to make sure that the immune system is functioning properly. You don't want to make it overwork, because actually that's not good. So we don't want to kind of boost it so that it's kind of working overtime, but trying to keep your immune system really healthy. And basically that comes down to a healthy, balanced diet. Looking after your gut, looking after your gut health, because your gut is where many of your immune systems are. Immune cells are in the gut. So that's a really important part. So keeping your gut healthy by having plenty of whole grains, and then lots of fruits and vegetables, because there's plenty of antioxidant vitamins in there, lots of vitamins and minerals. And if we are having a good balance of vitamins and minerals, then that's going to be good for our immune system as well. The one vitamin that you don't get from food, which we know it can be beneficial for our immune system, and obviously we're not going out as much at the moment, is your vitamin D. So you tend to get that from sunshine. We're now going into the summer months, so hopefully we'll be able to get outside and get a bit of vitamin D. But otherwise, during the winter, it's a good idea to maybe take a vitamin D supplement. But other than that, a well-balanced diet. And obviously, there are some foods that are involved in your immune system a bit more, but generally, I would say a well-balanced diet, healthy eating, and also making sure you do plenty of exercise is the most important thing for keeping yourself healthy. And then you're going to avoid things like, coughs and colds, as well as hopefully things like COVID as well.
No, that's
And get
great.
your vaccines, of course, when
Yeah.
they come.
No, thank you. And I think it's just, I think every now and again, we need to kind of just refocus our minds, don't we? And just think about, or, we hear so much, there's so much information. You're on Facebook or you're online, you see loads of different things on there. And I think sometimes it's just really good to refocus your mind, refocus your energy, and just, remind ourselves of those things that are important, particularly if we might be going out tonight and doing the food shop. You might just stop
Yeah.
at an aisle or a part of an aisle that you've not really thought about before. So very, very grateful to you today for joining us, Dahlia.
Well, thanks for having us along.
No, it's been great. Thank you. And we will share the recording, everybody, afterwards. And again, if you want to go back and watch the other Healthy Employee sessions, please go onto the PA Forum YouTube channel. And just remember that our next 3 sessions coming up is exploring stress in our behaviour, brain food, where Dahlia will be back again to join us. And we've also got menopause with positivity. So if you want to book any of those, then please go onto the PA Forum portal and you can book all of the sessions that you want to attend on there. But thank you so much again, Dahlia. It's been a pleasure, and Anna again for all your support. So thank you so much, and everybody for joining us today, and have a fantastic day.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And thanks for all of those questions. I hope you found it useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.